Jennifer Rodriguez arrived at Blackstone Financial every morning at exactly 6:45 a.m., a full hour and 15 minutes before her scheduled start time. She used her personal keycard to enter the 42nd floor of the Manhattan high-rise, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble as she made her way through the executive wing's empty corridors. The security guards had grown accustomed to her early arrivals over the past 3 years, offering friendly nods as she passed. Their station. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Her workstation occupied a strategically positioned alcove just outside the corner office of Marcus Thornfield, Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations. From her desk, Jennifer could monitor the flow of executives, manage complex scheduling matrices for 7 different department heads, and coordinate communications that stretched across 4 time zones. Her workspace was immaculately organized, 3 monitors displaying real-time market data, international news feeds, and executive calendars, a secure communication terminal for sensitive corporate correspondence, and filing systems arranged with military precision. At 28, Jennifer possessed an understated efficiency that kept the executive floor functioning seamlessly. She could recite quarterly earnings projections for every division under Thornfield's oversight, coordinate emergency board meetings within minutes of receiving authorization, and troubleshoot technology failures before most executives realized problems existed. When department heads needed last-minute research for high-stakes presentations, Jennifer delivered comprehensive analysis that exceeded their expectations. When communication breakdowns threatened critical deals, she already had alternative contact protocols in motion. This particular Monday morning began like countless others. Jennifer reviewed overnight communications from the company's London and Tokyo offices, cross-referenced meeting preparations for the week's strategic planning sessions, and updated security protocols for visiting international clients. She moved through these tasks with practiced fluency, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards as she coordinated the complex machinery of corporate operations. The executive wing began filling with personnel. Around 8 a.m., Marcus Thornfield emerged from the elevator bank accompanied by his usual entourage. Richard Blackwell, Director of Corporate Security, whose background included 15 years with the FBI. Amanda Pierce, a Harvard MBA who joined the company straight from McKinsey & Company. And David Chen, the Vice President of International Operations, who'd built his reputation orchestrating deals across Southeast Asia. Rodriguez Thornfield called without approaching her station, his voice carrying the casual authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. I need the Morrison Industries acquisition analysis updated with this morning's market fluctuations. Think you can handle the calculations, or should I have Pierce run the numbers? Jennifer looked up from her terminal, her expression professionally neutral, despite the familiar sting of condescension. The analysis was completed at 6:30 a.m., sir. I've uploaded the updated projections to the secure server and placed hard copies in your briefing folder. I've included 3 scenario models accounting for currency volatility and highlighted potential regulatory complications based on the SEC's recent policy statements. Pierce smirked visibly, exchanging a glance with Blackwell. Always trying to play analyst, she muttered, loud enough for Jennifer to hear while maintaining plausible deniability. Jennifer continued without acknowledging the comment. Additionally, I noticed a discrepancy in the proposed timeline for the Jakarta subsidiary integration. The communication infrastructure requirements weren't properly coordinated with the IT security protocols. If we adjust the implementation, sequence and position technical teams at these locations, we can maintain operational continuity while meeting all compliance requirements. Thornfield's expression tightened. He didn't appreciate suggestions from support staff, particularly not detailed operational recommendations that ventured beyond basic administrative duties. I'll be the judge of what requires adjustment, Rodriguez. Just stick to managing my calendar and leave strategic analysis to people with actual business education. Jennifer saved her work methodically and retrieved a folder from her secured filing cabinet. She placed it deliberately on her desk, opening it to reveal detailed certifications and documentation. Sir, regarding the Jakarta integration timeline, I've cross-referenced similar acquisitions with the regulatory environments in emerging markets. The data suggests a high probability of Rodriguez. Enough, Rodriguez. Thornfield's voice cut through the executive wing like a blade. You're an administrative assistant, not a strategic consultant. You manage schedules and handle correspondence. You don't make recommendations about multi-million-dollar acquisitions. That's why you're sitting behind that desk instead of leading presentations in the boardroom. The executive wing fell silent except for the steady hum of climate control systems and the distant sounds of Manhattan traffic 42 floors below. Chun shifted uncomfortably, and even Pierce seemed to recognize that something fundamental had shifted in the atmosphere. Jennifer closed the folder slowly, her hands steady despite the heat rising in her face. Understood, sir, she said quietly. As Thornfield and his followers disappeared into his office, Jennifer remained seated at her workstation, staring at the closed folder. Inside were copies of certifications that told a very different story about her qualifications. Advanced Strategic Planning from the Army War College, International Finance and Economics from Georgetown School of Foreign Service, Mandarin Chinese Fluency Certification, and specialized training credentials that carried classifications she couldn't discuss in civilian settings. Also tucked away was correspondence she'd received 2 weeks ago from Colonel Harrison Webb at the Pentagon. The communication, transmitted through encrypted channels, contained an offer that would extract her from the corporate world entirely. Webb knew nothing about her current situation at Blackstone Financial, but his message made clear that certain government agencies valued skills that private corporations consistently overlooked. Jennifer had been invisible in the corporate world for 3 years, but invisibility came with unexpected advantages. People didn't notice when she stayed after hours to analyze market trends using methodologies learned at the Defense Intelligence Agency. They didn't question why she volunteered for every international client coordination opportunity that crossed her desk. And they certainly didn't expect her to maintain security clearances that extended far beyond corporate requirements. She reopened her terminal and accessed a secure communication channel that existed parallel to Blackstone's corporate network. The message she composed was brief and encrypted. Assessment complete. Ready for extraction protocol if authorization is confirmed. Jennifer had spent 3 years learning to be invisible within the corporate system. Now circumstances were aligning for her to disappear completely and reappear precisely where no one expected her to be. What Thornfield and his team didn't know, what Jennifer had carefully concealed beneath her professional demeanor, was that she spent every spare moment maintaining operational readiness that went far beyond corporate skill sets. Not the standard business training that every MBA student absorbed during graduate school, but advanced tactical planning, crisis management protocols, and classified operational procedures that had crossed her desk during her previous assignment. With Joint Special Operations Command, she'd committed to memorizing the operational parameters of every security system in their building, from the standard access controls to the specialized surveillance equipment used for protecting high-value clients. During extended projects coordinating with international subsidiaries, she developed comprehensive intelligence profiles on key personnel, market conditions, and geopolitical factors that influenced corporate operations. Her morning routine included elements that would have surprised her colleagues. Before arriving at Blackstone, Jennifer completed a training regimen at a private facility in Queens, not the standard corporate fitness programs that executives favored, but specialized physical conditioning that maintained combat readiness. The facility's owner, retired Navy SEAL Marcus Torres, had initially questioned why a corporate secretary needed such intensive training. After their first session, he stopped asking questions and started designing programs that challenged her. Existing skills. The corporate world had taught Jennifer patience in ways that military service never could. In Delta Force, excellence was recognized immediately and rewarded accordingly. In the business environment, the same excellence was often dismissed or attributed to others. She'd learned to document everything meticulously, to anticipate problems 3 steps ahead, and to provide solutions so comprehensive that denial became impossible. Her desk phone rang with an internal call from Chen's office. "Rodriguez, I need you to coordinate the logistics for next week's Singapore conference. Standard arrangements, flights, accommodations, ground transportation." "Of course, Mr. Chen. Will this include the usual security protocols for international travel, or should I implement enhanced measures given the recent regional developments?" There was a pause. What regional developments? Jennifer accessed her private intelligence feeds, information sources that existed far outside standard corporate channels. The political situation in Malaysia has created some complications for business travel. Additionally, there are new maritime security concerns in the South China Sea that could affect transportation routes. "I can coordinate with appropriate agencies to ensure all travel remains secure and uninterrupted. Just book the flights, Rodriguez. Leave security assessments to people qualified to make them." After ending the call, Jennifer returned to her analysis of Thornfield's schedule. His calendar revealed patterns that concerned her meetings with individuals whose background suggested involvement in activities that stretched beyond legitimate business operations. The timing of these appointments coincided with irregular financial movements that her training had taught her to recognize as potentially problematic. She'd been monitoring these patterns for 6 months, building a comprehensive profile using techniques learned during intelligence gathering operations in Afghanistan and Syria. The evidence suggested that Blackstone Financial was being used for purposes that its legitimate executives might not fully understand. At 11:30 a.m., Jennifer received an encrypted message on her secure terminal. The sender's identity was masked, but the formatting indicated origin from governmental sources. The content was brief: asset compromised. Immediate extraction recommended. Respond within 24 hours. Jennifer stared at the message, understanding its implications immediately. Her cover within Blackstone Financial had been identified by someone with resources that exceeded normal corporate intelligence capabilities. The recommendation for extraction meant that her current assignment was no longer sustainable. She composed a careful response: package secured. Ready for transition on your authorization. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The remainder of her workday proceeded normally, but Jennifer's awareness had shifted into operational mode. She noticed details that had previously seemed routine. The new security guard who'd appeared 2 weeks ago, asking unusually specific questions about executive schedules. The maintenance personnel who'd been accessing areas beyond their typical responsibilities. The subtle changes in Thornfield's communication patterns that suggested increased stress levels. At 3:15 p.m., Pierce approached her desk with an expression that mixed authority with barely concealed satisfaction. "Rodriguez, Mr. Thornfield wants to see you in his office immediately." Jennifer saved her work and locked her terminal according to security protocols that exceeded corporate requirements. She gathered a specific folder from her filing system, not the one containing her classified credentials, but documentation that would serve different purposes, and walked toward Thornfield's office. The meeting she was about to enter would determine whether her corporate cover remained viable or whether the extraction protocol would become necessary. Either way, Jennifer Rodriguez was prepared for whatever came next. Her 3 years at Blackstone Financial had been carefully planned from the beginning. The position had provided perfect cover for monitoring financial networks that intelligence agencies suspected of supporting activities contrary to national security interests. Jennifer's assignment had been to gather evidence while maintaining her civilian identity, but recent developments suggested that her investigation had attracted unwanted attention. As she reached Thornfield's office door, Jennifer's training automatically assessed the environment. 2 exits, 3 potential defensive positions, communication equipment that could be compromised or utilized depending on circumstances. The habits developed during special operations never truly disappeared. They simply adapted to different environments. She knocked twice and entered when Thornfield's voice granted permission. The meeting that followed would test everything she'd learned about operating undercover in hostile environments where the greatest danger came not from armed opponents, but from people who wielded corporate authority like a weapon. The meeting in Thornfield's office lasted exactly 12 minutes. Jennifer emerged with her security access downgraded, her computer privileges restricted, and her responsibilities reduced to what Pierce had mockingly called actual secretary work. The executive team had been thorough in their systematic dismantling of her position. By Tuesday morning, Jennifer discovered that her keycard no longer granted access to the executive conference rooms. She stood at the entrance to the strategic planning wing, watching as her access card triggered a red denial light on the scanner. A line of analysts and junior executives waited behind her, their morning briefings delayed as she repeatedly attempted entry with credentials that had worked flawlessly for 3 years. Having problems, Rodriguez? Pierce appeared beside her, satisfaction evident in her tone. Maybe you should try the general administrative floor. You know, where the clerical staff belongs. Jennifer stepped aside, allowing Pierce to swipe her own credentials. The door unlocked immediately with an affirmative beep. There must be a system error, Jennifer said evenly. I'll check with IT security. Oh, there's no error, Pierce replied, holding the door open but pointedly blocking Jennifer's path. Mr. Thornfield implemented new security protocols yesterday. Apparently, there were concerns about non-essential personnel accessing sensitive corporate information. The executives waiting behind them exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sarah Martinez, a senior financial analyst who had collaborated with Jennifer on numerous projects, stepped forward. Miss Pierce, with respect, Jennifer has clearance for this area. She coordinates all our international client communications and has access to Martinez. Pierce interrupted sharply. Take it up with Mr. Thornfield if you have issues with proper security measures. Jennifer watched Pierce disappear into the restricted area, then turned to Martinez with a composed smile. It's fine, Sarah. I'll sort this out. But as Jennifer walked across the corporate floor toward the Human Resources Department, she noticed other changes. The security codes to the document storage facilities had been altered. Her regular workstation had been reassigned to a junior administrative assistant. Her name had been removed from the executive briefing distribution lists posted in the main corridor. In the HR office, Jennifer found herself sitting across from Director Patricia Holbrook, a woman she'd worked with professionally for 3 years. Holbrook looked distinctly uncomfortable as she reviewed Jennifer's file on her tablet. I'm sorry, Jennifer. The access restriction came directly from Mr. Thornfield. He cited security concerns and operational efficiency. Patricia, I've maintained top-level clearance for 3 years without incident. My record is spotless. What specific security concern prompted this? Holbrook hesitated, avoiding Jennifer's gaze. He didn't specify details, but he mentioned that your recent behavior has been concerning. Apparently, you've been overstepping your assigned duties and attempting to influence strategic decisions. Jennifer felt something cold settle in her stomach. What decisions? Holbrook consulted her notes carefully, questioning established acquisition protocols, attempting to override financial assessments, challenging executive decisions in front of subordinates. She looked up with what might have been sympathy. Look, Jennifer, I've known you since you started here. This doesn't sound like you, but Marcus is building a case that you're becoming disruptive to corporate harmony. Disruptive for doing my job? For doing more than your job, Holbrook corrected. For acting like you're qualified to make decisions that are above your position and experience level. Jennifer left the HR office with her access temporarily restored to basic levels. But the message was unmistakable. Stay in your lane or lose your position entirely. As she walked back toward her reassigned workspace in the general administrative area, she passed the executive training center where Chun was leading a team through crisis management simulations. He nodded to her briefly, seemingly oblivious to the coordinated campaign building against her. That evening, Jennifer stayed late in the nearly empty office building. She wasn't alone. Sarah Martinez found her in the 42nd floor break room at 9 p.m., nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Jennifer, what's really happening here? Martinez asked, settling into the chair across from her. Marcus has been asking questions about your work patterns, your access history, even your educational background. I've never seen him target someone like this. I think he wants me gone. Why? You're the most effective coordinator this floor has. Half our successful international deals wouldn't have happened without your behind-the-scenes work. Jennifer studied Martinez carefully. The analyst represented the ethical core of Blackstone's legitimate operations, someone who valued competence over politics and results over appearances. Can I ask you something off the record? Shoot. If someone hypothetically had all the qualifications for strategic analysis, all the training, all the expertise, but was blocked from advancement because of politics or preconceptions, what would you advise them to do? Martinez was quiet for a long moment, turning her coffee mug slowly between her hands. Hypothetically, I'd say that person should remember that the corporate world is bigger than any one company. Sometimes you have to navigate around obstacles instead of confronting them directly, even if it means career suicide. Martinez's voice softened. Some things are worth the risk, and some people are meant to be making the big decisions, whether or not their current position reflects that reality. After Martinez left, Jennifer opened her secure tablet and composed a message through encrypted channels. Situation accelerating. Request immediate extraction authorization. The response arrived within 15 minutes. Authorization confirmed. Report to designated location Friday 0600 for transition briefing. New assignment begins immediately upon confirmation. Jennifer printed the message, folded it carefully, and secured it in her personal effects. Tomorrow she would submit formal resignation to Blackstone Financial through proper corporate channels. She would follow established protocols and document everything meticulously. But tonight, she had one more message to send. This communication went directly to the Securities and Exchange Commission's Financial Crimes Division. The subject line read, Request for formal investigation of systematic financial irregularities and potential money laundering operations. Jennifer had been playing defense for 3 years. Now it was time to go on the offensive. The evidence she'd been gathering wasn't just about her own mistreatment. It was about Blackstone Financial's involvement in activities that threatened national security. Her corporate cover had allowed her to document financial transactions that suggested the company was being used to launder money for organizations with hostile intentions toward American interests. Thornfield's systematic campaign to discredit and remove her wasn't just about corporate politics. It was about eliminating someone who'd gotten too close to operations that were never meant to be discovered by someone with her particular skill set and background. The real question was whether Thornfield Was a willing participant in these activities, or simply a useful instrument being manipulated by others? Jennifer's analysis suggested the latter. His behavior patterns indicated someone under pressure from sources he couldn't control or fully understand. Either way, her mission at Blackstone Financial was complete. She'd gathered the evidence needed to expose the financial network, and her extraction would allow other agencies to take appropriate action. The secretary they'd underestimated had been far more dangerous to their operations than they could have imagined. Jennifer gathered her personal items and prepared to leave the office that had been her cover for 3 years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight marked the end of her invisible war within the corporate world. By Friday morning, she would be someone else entirely, someone whose true capabilities would no longer need to remain hidden. What none of Jennifer's colleagues at Blackstone Financial knew was how she spent her time outside the gleaming corporate towers of Manhattan. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, she drove 45 minutes to an unmarked facility in Newark, New Jersey, where the sign simply read Metropolitan Security Training Center. The facility's owner, retired Delta Force operator Marcus Torres, ran what appeared to be a standard corporate security training business. Companies sent their executives for kidnapping prevention courses and hostile environment awareness seminars. What most clients never saw were the basement levels where more specialized training occurred. Jennifer had found Torres through encrypted military networks 3 years ago when she'd first taken the assignment at Blackstone. Maintaining operational readiness during deep cover assignments was crucial, but challenging traditional gyms and martial arts studios couldn't provide the specific conditioning required for someone with her background. Rodriguez, Torres called as she entered the facility's main training floor. "You're 10 minutes late. That's not like you." Jennifer secured her equipment bag and began her warm-up routine. "Thornfield kept me in a meeting discussing my attitude problems. Apparently, I'm becoming difficult to manage." Torres paused his equipment inspection. In the 3 years he'd been training Jennifer, he'd never heard her mention workplace difficulties. She compartmentalized her civilian cover completely, discussing operational fitness but never revealing details about her assignment. "Problems with the day job? The kind that suggest my current assignment may be reaching its conclusion." They moved through an hour of intensive close-quarters combat drills, weapons handling, and tactical scenario training. Jennifer's movements flowed with the precision that came from years of muscle memory built under extreme conditions. To any observer, she appeared to be a dedicated amateur learning self-defense. In reality, she was maintaining skills that had kept her alive in Afghanistan, Syria, and other locations that didn't officially appear in her personnel file. After the session, Torres found Jennifer reviewing tactical manuals in his office, not the standard security handbooks available to civilian contractors, but classified field guides and strategic planning documents that crossed his desk through continuing connections with active special operations units. "These aren't typical reading material for corporate secretaries," Torres observed. Jennifer looked up from a manual on urban counterintelligence operations. "They help me stay current with developing methodologies." "Current for what?" "Last I checked, Blackstone Financial wasn't conducting operations in denied access territories." "You'd be surprised what skills transfer between environments," Jennifer replied, closing the manual. "The same tactical awareness that works in hostile foreign territories applies to corporate espionage prevention. The same strategic thinking that plans military operations can optimize complex business logistics." Torres studied her carefully. "Jennifer, in 3 years you've never mentioned what you did before working at that financial firm. Your skill level suggests extensive operational experience, but your cover story doesn't add up." Jennifer considered her response. Torres had top-secret clearance and connections throughout the special operations community. Her assignment at Blackstone was approaching its end, and she might need his expertise for the transition ahead. "What?" If I told you that some corporate secretaries have backgrounds that include assignments with Joint Special Operations Command, that some administrative positions provide perfect cover for intelligence gathering in environments where traditional operatives would be too conspicuous? Torres leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. I'd say that would explain why you're the only student I've ever had who arrived already knowing techniques I spent 20 years learning. And I'd say that some assignments require maintaining operational readiness while appearing completely harmless to people who underestimate what secretaries are capable of accomplishing. That weekend, Jennifer took her monthly trip to a private shooting range in the Catskill Mountains, 3 hours north of the city. The facility catered to law enforcement and military personnel, offering advanced firearms training that went far beyond civilian self-defense courses. Range Master Catherine Walsh, a former Army Ranger turned competitive shooter, had been working with Jennifer since her first month at Blackstone. Like Torres, Walsh had initially questioned why a corporate employee needed such intensive marksmanship training. Unlike Torres, she'd stopped asking questions after watching Jennifer demonstrate skills that exceeded most active duty operators. "So," Walsh said as they walked toward the long-range precision shooting stations, "how's the corporate world treating you?" "Like most corporate worlds treat people they don't understand," Jennifer replied, adjusting her scope settings. "They see the surface and assume that's all there is." They spent the morning working through advanced shooting scenarios, multiple target engagement, shooting under stress, precision shooting at extended ranges. Jennifer's performance consistently exceeded the standards required for special operations qualification. "You know," Walsh said as they cleaned their weapons, "I've been training shooters for 15 years. I can usually tell within the first session whether someone has real potential or if they're just weekend warriors playing soldier. And you shoot like someone who's had to use these skills when missing means dying. That's not something you can fake or learn from textbooks." Jennifer nodded, focusing on her weapon maintenance. "Some skills you hope you never need, but you maintain them anyway because you never know when circumstances might change." On Sunday mornings, Jennifer maintained a different type of preparation. She met with Dr. Elena Vasquez, a linguistics professor at Columbia University, who specialized in dialectical analysis and cultural immersion techniques. Their sessions took place in Vasquez's private office, ostensibly for Jennifer to maintain her Mandarin Chinese proficiency for corporate communications. In reality, their work went far beyond language maintenance. Vasquez had spent 2 decades consulting for intelligence agencies, helping operatives develop the cultural fluency necessary for deep cover assignments in foreign environments. "Your pronunciation has improved significantly," Vasquez noted as they concluded a conversation entirely in Mandarin. "But I'm curious, when did a corporate secretary have opportunities to practice with native speakers in operational contexts?" Jennifer switched back to English. "Business travel provides interesting opportunities for linguistic immersion. Business travel to regions where advanced tactical Mandarin would be necessary. You'd be surprised how many business negotiations benefit from understanding subtext that doesn't translate directly." Vasquez smiled knowingly. "Indeed. And I suppose your interest in Arabic dialect differentiation and Pashto conversational patterns also relates to international business communications. Globalization requires diverse skill sets. These weekend preparations weren't just about maintaining readiness. They were about preparing for whatever came next." Jennifer's intelligence gathering at Blackstone had uncovered financial networks that supported operations across multiple continents. When her corporate cover ended, she might need to operate in environments where language skills, tactical awareness, and operational capabilities would determine mission success. Monday morning brought new restrictions at Blackstone. Jennifer's computer access had been further limited, preventing her from accessing international communications databases she'd used for 3 years. Her desk had been relocated to a position with limited visibility of executive activities. Even her corporate email account had been flagged for monitoring, but Jennifer had anticipated these measures. Over 3 years, she developed alternative information networks that existed completely outside Blackstone's official systems. Her real intelligence gathering didn't depend on corporate databases or executive access. It relied on methods she'd learned during operations were traditional. Intelligence sources were unavailable. That evening, she received an encrypted message that changed everything. Package extraction confirmed for Friday 0600. New assignment location classified. Prepare for immediate deployment to the operational environment. Jennifer stared at the message, understanding its implications. Her corporate secretary cover was about to disappear entirely. Within a week, she would return to the operational world where her true capabilities were not just recognized, but essential for mission success. The people at Blackstone Financial who'd spent 3 years dismissing her as an overambitious secretary were about to discover exactly what kind of operator they'd been underestimating. Wednesday morning arrived with an emergency all-hands meeting that Jennifer learned about through office gossip rather than official notification. Her name had been deliberately omitted from the distribution list, but the meeting's agenda concerned irregularities in the International Accounts Division, specifically the systems Jennifer had been monitoring for evidence of financial crimes. She positioned herself strategically in the back of the conference room, arriving early enough to secure a seat before anyone could object to her presence. As executives filed in, their body language suggested crisis management mode, hushed conversations, tense expressions, and the unmistakable energy of people attempting damage control. Thornfield entered accompanied by 2 individuals Jennifer didn't recognize, a woman in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase with diplomatic security locks, and a man whose posture and scanning behavior marked him as professional security. Not corporate security like Blackwall, but something more specialized. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thornfield began, his voice carrying none of its usual confident authority, "we're facing some administrative challenges that require immediate attention. Certain regulatory agencies have raised questions about our international transaction protocols." Jennifer's pulse quickened. The investigation she'd triggered was already producing results, faster than she'd anticipated. The Securities and Exchange Commission had acted on her intelligence report with impressive efficiency. "Our IT security division has identified potential unauthorized access to sensitive corporate databases," Thornfield continued, his eyes scanning the room until they found Jennifer. "We believe someone with administrative privileges has been conducting unauthorized research into confidential financial records." Pierce stood up, her voice cutting through the conference room's tension. "Mr. Thornfield, are you suggesting we have a security breach from internal personnel?" "I'm stating that we have confirmed evidence of someone systematically accessing information beyond their clearance level, downloading classified documents, and potentially sharing sensitive corporate data with external parties." The room erupted in murmurs as executives began looking around suspiciously. Jennifer maintained her composure, though she recognized that Thornfield was building toward a direct accusation. Her intelligence gathering had been more visible than she'd realized. "Furthermore," Thornfield announced, producing a folder thick with documentation, "our investigation has revealed that this individual has been using corporate resources to conduct personal research into our clients' backgrounds, financial histories, and business associations. This represents a clear violation of confidentiality agreements and potentially constitutes corporate espionage." Jennifer felt the room's attention shifting toward her as colleagues began connecting the implications. She'd been too thorough in her evidence gathering, leaving digital traces that corporate IT security could track and interpret as unauthorized activity. "The individual responsible," Thornfield continued, his voice growing more commanding, "has also been observed engaging in suspicious communications using equipment not issued by this company. Security footage shows after-hours access to restricted areas and interaction with unauthorized external parties. Blackwell stepped forward, producing a tablet displaying security camera footage. This shows our suspect accessing executive conference rooms outside normal business hours, photographing documents that should never leave company premises, and conducting extended communication sessions using personal encrypted devices. Jennifer watched herself on the surveillance footage, recognizing her own intelligence-gathering activities now being presented as criminal behavior. The irony wasn't lost on her. The evidence of her investigating their potential money laundering was being used to frame her as the actual criminal. "Jennifer Rodriguez," Thornfield announced, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent conference room. "Please stand up." Jennifer rose slowly, her training automatically assessing exit routes and potential complications. The two strangers Thornfield had brought were positioning themselves strategically, blocking the primary exits. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a coordinated containment operation. Ms. Rodriguez, the unidentified woman, spoke for the first time, her accent suggesting Eastern European origins. "You've been conducting unauthorized surveillance on legitimate business operations. We need to discuss your activities and motivations." "I'm sorry," Jennifer replied evenly, "but I don't believe you've identified yourself or explained your authority to conduct investigations within this company." The woman smiled coldly. "My authority extends beyond corporate policies. Ms. Rodriguez, your activities have attracted attention from parties who take financial security very seriously." Jennifer understood immediately that she'd uncovered more than simple money laundering. The financial network she'd been investigating apparently had connections to organizations with resources that extended into corporate America, and those organizations had identified her as a threat. "Security will escort you to a private conference room where we can discuss this matter more thoroughly," Thornfield announced. "Your personal effects will be searched, and your computer access will be permanently revoked." "Am I being arrested?" Jennifer asked, maintaining her professional demeanor while mentally calculating response options. "You're being investigated," the unidentified man answered, speaking for the first time. His voice carried the controlled aggression of someone accustomed to intimidating people through implied threats. "How cooperative you are will determine how this investigation proceeds." Jennifer gathered her belongings slowly, giving herself time to assess the situation fully. The meeting wasn't just about discrediting her. It was about determining how much she knew and who she might have shared information with. These weren't corporate executives conducting damage control. They were operatives attempting to contain an intelligence breach. As security moved to escort her from the conference room, Jennifer made her decision. "Actually," she said, reaching into her briefcase with deliberate movements, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about who's investigating whom." She produced a folder containing documents that made Thornfield's face drain of color. "These are copies of financial transaction records that document systematic money laundering operations using Blackstone Financial as a front for international criminal organizations. I've been gathering this evidence for 3 years under authorization from federal law enforcement agencies." The conference room erupted in shocked murmurs as Jennifer continued. "What you call unauthorized access, I call gathering evidence of criminal activity. What you call corporate espionage, I call fulfilling my duty to national security." The unidentified woman stepped forward aggressively, but Jennifer was already moving. Years of tactical training had taught her to recognize when situations were about to turn violent, and the body language around her suggested that this confrontation was escalating beyond verbal threats. "Furthermore," Jennifer announced, backing toward the emergency exit while maintaining eye contact with her accusers, "this meeting is being recorded by federal agencies who are very interested in identifying the individuals behind these operations." She activated a device from her briefcase, that began broadcasting on emergency frequencies monitored by law enforcement. The signal would bring federal agents to Blackstone Financial. Within minutes, agents who were already positioned nearby, waiting for her signal. "Ms. Rodriguez," Thornfield said desperately, "you don't understand the situation you're creating." These people, Jennifer interrupted, "are exactly why federal agencies sent me here in the first place. The question is whether you're a willing participant in their operations, or simply another victim being manipulated." The unidentified man reached inside his jacket, but Jennifer was already in motion. 3 years of maintaining operational readiness, while pretending to be a harmless secretary, had prepared her for exactly this moment. What happened next would determine whether her deep cover assignment ended successfully or became a firefight in a Manhattan conference room. Either way, Jennifer Rodriguez, the corporate secretary, was about to disappear forever. The unidentified man's hand froze inside his jacket as Jennifer's movement carried her toward the conference room's emergency exit. But instead of fleeing, she positioned herself strategically with her back to the reinforced wall, giving her clear sight lines to all potential threats while limiting their angles of approach. "I wouldn't recommend completing that motion," Jennifer said calmly, her voice carrying an authority that none of her colleagues had ever heard before. "Federal agents are monitoring this building, and any aggressive action will bring immediate tactical response." The man's eyes narrowed as he reassessed the woman he'd dismissed as a corporate secretary moments earlier. Jennifer's posture had shifted subtly, but completely gone was the different administrative assistant, replaced by someone who moved with predatory awareness. "You're bluffing," the unidentified woman said, though uncertainty had crept into her voice. "You're a secretary who got in over her head." Jennifer smiled, reaching slowly into her briefcase to produce a leather credential holder. She opened it deliberately, displaying identification that made several executives gasp audibly. "Special Agent Jennifer Rodriguez, Defense Intelligence Agency. My assignment here has been to investigate financial networks supporting hostile foreign operations." Thornfield sank into his chair, the color draining from his face as he understood the implications. "You've been investigating us for 3 years?" "I've been investigating the organizations using Blackstone Financial for money laundering and illegal arms financing," Jennifer corrected. "Whether you're a willing participant or an unwitting tool remains to be determined." The conference room had fallen completely silent except for the steady hum of climate control systems and the distant sounds of Manhattan traffic. Every executive present was recalculating 3 years of interactions with the woman they'd dismissed as an overambitious. Secretary Pierce stood up slowly, her usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. "This is impossible. You processed my travel arrangements. You scheduled my meetings. I'm a decorated special operations officer with 15 years of experience in intelligence gathering and counter-terrorism operations," Jennifer interrupted. "The secretary role was perfect cover for monitoring your international transactions and identifying the criminal networks you've been unknowingly facilitating." The unidentified man finally withdrew his hand from inside his jacket, but his movement revealed the outline of a shoulder holster. "Even if you are federal law enforcement, you're outnumbered and isolated. Your investigation dies here." Jennifer's training had prepared her for this exact scenario, the moment when deep cover operations transitioned from passive intelligence gathering to active combat. She'd hoped to complete her assignment without violence, but the presence of armed hostiles made that outcome unlikely. "Actually," she said, activating a communication device that had been disguised as a standard corporate pager, "backup arrived 12 minutes ago." The conference room's main doors burst open simultaneously as federal tactical teams flooded the space. Federal agents. Nobody moved, hands visible. The coordination was flawless. Jennifer had triggered the emergency protocol precisely when her intelligence indicated maximum target exposure. The timing gave federal agents clear identification of all parties present, while preventing escape or evidence destruction. Special Agent Rodriguez called the tactical team leader. Status: report. Situation contained, Jennifer replied, her voice carrying the crisp professionalism of someone accustomed to high-stakes operations. Primary targets identified, evidence secured, minimal resistance encountered. The unidentified woman attempted to reach for something in her briefcase, but Jennifer was already moving. 3 years of maintaining combat readiness while pretending to be harmless had prepared her for exactly this moment. Her response was swift and decisive, a disarming technique that left the woman on the floor with her arm immobilized and her weapon secured. Impressive, the tactical team leader observed. Most undercover assignments don't require that level of close-quarters proficiency. Most undercover assignments don't involve international criminal organizations with this level of sophistication, Jennifer replied, securing the weapon she'd taken from the hostile operative. As federal agents began processing the scene, Jennifer turned her attention to the Blackstone financial executives who were watching in stunned silence. Mr. Thornfield, I need you to understand that your company has been compromised by foreign operatives using your international division for illegal financial transactions. Thornfield looked around the conference room as if seeing it for the first time. The Singapore accounts, the Malaysian transfers. You're saying those weren't legitimate business operations? Those transactions were funding arms shipments to terrorist organizations and facilitating money laundering for international criminal syndicates, Jennifer explained. Your legitimate business operations provided perfect cover for activities that threatened national security. Shun, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. Jennifer, Agent Rodriguez, how long have you known? I identified the irregular patterns within 6 months of starting here. The subsequent 2.5 years were spent documenting the complete network, identifying all participants, and gathering evidence sufficient for federal prosecution. Martinez raised her hand tentatively, as if still in a corporate meeting rather than a federal crime scene. The analysis you always provided, the international market assessments, those weren't for business purposes. They were legitimate business analyses that also served intelligence-gathering objectives, Jennifer replied. I needed to maintain my cover while building comprehensive profiles of the criminal networks. Your legitimate work provided excellent camouflage for my real mission. As federal agents escorted the unidentified operatives away in restraints, Jennifer gathered her personal effects from the conference room. Her 3-year assignment at Blackstone Financial was officially complete, but the investigation would continue as other agencies pursued the international connections she'd uncovered. Agent Rodriguez, Pierce said quietly as federal agents prepared to interview the remaining executives, I owe you an apology. I treated you terribly, and you were protecting all of us. Jennifer paused in her evidence gathering. Pierce, you treated me exactly as my cover identity was designed to be treated. Your behavior helped maintain the illusion that I was just an ambitious secretary rather than a federal agent gathering evidence. But the way I dismissed your capabilities, the way I undermined your suggestions, made it impossible for anyone to suspect that my real purpose was conducting counterintelligence operations, Jennifer finished. Your attitude toward secretaries was predictable, which made it useful for my assignment. Thornfield approached hesitantly as federal agents prepared to seal the conference room as a crime scene. Agent Rodriguez, was I? Did I unknowingly facilitate criminal activities? Jennifer studied him carefully. Her 3 years of observation had convinced her that Thornfield was manipulated rather than complicit. Mr. Thornfield, you were targeted, specifically because your legitimate business reputation provided credibility for illegal operations. The foreign operatives needed a respected financial executive who wouldn't question certain transactions. So I was just a useful fool? You were a patriotic American businessman whose success made him valuable to criminals who exploit legitimate institutions, Jennifer corrected. The difference matters for both your legal exposure and your future cooperation with federal investigations. As the tactical teams completed their initial sweep, Jennifer received a communication from her handler at the Defense Intelligence Agency. Her next assignment was already prepared, another deep cover operation in a different city, targeting a different criminal network, but this time she wouldn't be going in alone. The success of her corporate secretary cover had convinced federal agencies to expand the program. Other special operations veterans would be placed in seemingly harmless civilian positions, gathering intelligence on threats that traditional law enforcement couldn't access. Jennifer Rodriguez, the corporate secretary, was disappearing forever. What emerged from the conference room was Special Agent Rodriguez, whose true capabilities had finally been revealed to the people who'd spent 3 years underestimating exactly what secretaries could accomplish when properly motivated and extensively trained. The proving moment was complete. Now came the recognition that would change everything. The news of Jennifer's true identity spread through Blackstone Financial like wildfire within hours of the federal raid. By evening, every employee from junior analysts to senior partners knew that the secretary they'd dismissed for 3 years had been one of the Defense Intelligence Agency's most accomplished undercover operatives. Director Patricia Holbrook found herself in the unprecedented position of reviewing personnel files to determine how many other employees might have hidden backgrounds. Her conversation with FBI Special Agent Michael Thompson, who was coordinating the ongoing investigation, proved both illuminating and disturbing. "Ms. Holbrook," Agent Thompson explained as they sat in her office surrounded by evidence boxes, "Agent Rodriguez's placement at Blackstone wasn't random. Her military record includes 2 tours in Afghanistan, specialized training in financial crimes investigation, and fluency in 5 languages including Arabic and Mandarin." Holbrook stared at Jennifer's real personnel file, which bore little resemblance to the corporate resume she'd reviewed 3 years earlier. "She has a master's degree in international finance from Georgetown and advanced tactical training from the Army War College. How did we not know any of this? Because she was specifically trained to appear overqualified for clerical work, while being perfectly qualified for intelligence gathering. Her cover story was designed to make corporate executives underestimate her capabilities while giving her access to exactly the information she needed. The implications were staggering. Every dismissive comment, every condescending interaction, every attempt to limit her responsibilities had been observed and documented by someone with the training to recognize patterns that indicated criminal activity. Meanwhile, Marcus Thornfield sat in a federal interview room, finally understanding how thoroughly he'd been manipulated. The evidence Agent Rodriguez had gathered painted a picture of systematic exploitation that extended far beyond what he'd realized. "Mr. Thornfield," FBI agent Sarah Chun explained, "the foreign operatives who appeared at your company today have been under surveillance for 18 months. They've been using legitimate American businesses to launder money for arms dealers and terrorist organizations." Thornfield reviewed transaction records that Agent Rodriguez had flagged in her evidence package. "These Singapore accounts. I approve these transfers personally. I thought they were legitimate investment opportunities. They were carefully constructed to appear legitimate. The criminal organization specifically targeted your company because of your reputation for ethical business practices. Your integrity provided credibility for their illegal operations. And Jennifer, Agent Rodriguez, she knew this entire time?" Agent Chun consulted her notes. Agent Rodriguez identified the irregular patterns within 6 months but needed additional time to map the complete criminal network. Her intelligence gathering prevented an estimated $40 million in illegal arms sales and identified terrorism financing operations across 3 continents. The reversal of fortune for those who had dismissed Jennifer was swift and comprehensive. Amanda Pierce found herself under internal review for her treatment of a federal agent, while Richard Blackwell faced questions about why his security protocols had failed to identify the actual threats to corporate operations. But the most dramatic reversal came from an unexpected source. Colonel Harrison Webb, Jennifer's contact at the Pentagon, requested a meeting with Blackstone Financial's senior leadership to discuss the implications of her assignment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Webb addressed the emergency board meeting. 3 days after the raid, Agent Rodriguez's operation represents one of the most successful long-term intelligence gathering missions in recent history. Her work has dismantled a criminal network that posed significant threats to national security. Board Chairman Robert Sterling, who had never interacted directly with Jennifer during her corporate assignment, asked the question everyone was considering. "Colonel, how do we ensure our company wasn't permanently damaged by this investigation?" "By understanding that Agent Rodriguez protected your company's legitimate operations while exposing the criminal exploitation," Webb replied. "Her evidence clearly distinguishes between your lawful business activities and the illegal operations that were using your infrastructure." The recognition continued to build as details of Jennifer's assignment became clearer. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office issued a statement commending the intelligence gathering that had prevented significant terrorist financing. The Securities and Exchange Commission publicly praised the operation that had exposed international money laundering schemes. Within a week, Jennifer received formal recognition from multiple federal agencies. The Defense Intelligence Agency presented her with the Exceptional Service Medal for her 3-year undercover assignment. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division awarded her their Outstanding Achievement recognition for dismantling criminal financial networks. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source: the Blackstone Financial employees who had worked with her throughout the assignment. Sarah Martinez organized a gathering at a Manhattan restaurant where Jennifer's former colleagues could express their appreciation privately. The atmosphere was complex, part celebration, part apology, part amazement at the revelation of who had been working among them. "Jennifer," Martinez said as the group assembled, "we need to understand something. Were you ever actually the person we thought we knew?" Jennifer considered the question carefully. "The skills I demonstrated in corporate analysis, international coordination, and problem-solving were genuine. The personality you knew was authentic. The only difference was that my motivations included objectives beyond corporate success." Pierce approached hesitantly, carrying the weight of 3 years of dismissive behavior. "Agent Rodriguez, I was wrong about everything. I treated you terribly, and you were protecting all of us while I was undermining your work. Amanda, your treatment of me was actually helpful for maintaining my cover. If the senior executives had taken me seriously, it might have compromised the investigation. But the way I dismissed your capabilities, the way I suggested you didn't belong in strategic roles," Jennifer smiled with genuine warmth, "made it impossible for anyone to suspect that I was gathering intelligence on international criminal operations. Your assumptions about secretaries were exactly what my cover identity required." David Chun, who had coordinated several international projects with Jennifer, shook his head in amazement. "The insights you provided about Asian markets, the cultural analysis that helped us navigate complex negotiations, that wasn't corporate training, was it?" "That was intelligence training combined with operational experience in those regions," Jennifer confirmed. "My assignments in Afghanistan and Syria included coordination with international partners, which provided the cultural knowledge that proved useful for legitimate business operations." The conversation continued for hours as Jennifer's former colleagues processed the implications of working alongside a federal agent without knowing it. The questions ranged from practical concerns about whether their communications had been monitored to amazement at the complexity of maintaining such an elaborate cover identity. Thornfield arrived late to the gathering, having spent the day in continued federal interviews. His approach to Jennifer carried the weight of someone who had fundamentally misunderstood a situation with serious consequences. "Agent Rodriguez," he said formally, "I owe you more than an apology. I nearly destroyed the career of someone who was protecting our company and our country." "Mr. Thornfield, you responded exactly as my psychological profile predicted you would." Corporate executives typically react defensively when their authority is questioned by subordinates. That predictable behavior helped maintain the illusion that I was just an ambitious secretary. But I actively worked to discredit you, to limit your access, to force you out of the company. Jennifer's expression grew serious, which created perfect conditions for the criminal operatives to believe they had eliminated the threat I represented. "Your campaign against me convinced them that I was just a troublesome employee rather than a federal agent gathering evidence." The revelation reframed every interaction from the previous 3 years. Jennifer's apparent overreach had been professional competence. Her suggestions about international operations had been intelligence-based assessments. Her persistence in the face of dismissal had been dedication to a mission that required her to maintain her position regardless of personal cost. As the evening concluded, Jennifer received a call that would determine her next assignment. The success of her corporate secretary cover had convinced federal agencies to expand the program significantly. Other special operations veterans would be placed in civilian positions across multiple industries, creating an intelligence network that could identify threats traditional law enforcement couldn't access. The woman they had underestimated as too ambitious for her position was about to become the architect of a new approach to domestic counterintelligence, one based on the understanding that the most dangerous operatives were often those who appeared completely harmless. 6 months after the federal raid at Blackstone Financial, Jennifer Rodriguez stood before a classified briefing room at the Pentagon, addressing an audience of intelligence directors, special operations commanders, and senior federal law enforcement officials. The woman who had spent 3 years being dismissed as an overambitious secretary was now presenting the strategic framework that would revolutionize domestic counterintelligence operations. "The corporate integration protocol," Jennifer explained, gesturing to a presentation displaying organizational charts and operational timelines, "leverages a fundamental weakness in how criminal organizations assess threats. They expect federal agents to look like federal agents. They don't expect them to look like administrative assistants, junior analysts, or maintenance supervisors." Director Patricia Mason of the FBI's Counterterrorism Division leaned forward in her chair. "Agent Rodriguez, the success of your Blackstone assignment was remarkable, but can this approach scale to a national program?" "Ma'am, we've already identified insertion points across 47 major corporations in 12 cities. Each position provides access to financial networks, communication systems, or logistical operations that criminal organizations require for their activities." The presentation continued with case studies from Jennifer's assignment-specific examples of how her secretary cover had provided intelligence that traditional surveillance methods couldn't access. Her daily coordination of international communications had revealed patterns that indicated money laundering. Her scheduling of executive meetings had identified suspicious contacts with known criminal associates. Her access to financial records had documented transactions that funded illegal arms sales. Colonel Webb, who had overseen Jennifer's extraction from Blackstone, presented the operational results. Agent Rodriguez's intelligence directly prevented 17 terrorist financing operations, dismantled 3 international money laundering networks, and led to 43 arrests across 7 countries. The financial impact of the criminal activities she prevented exceeds $200 million. But the briefing's most significant moment came when Director Harrison Clark of the Defense Intelligence Agency announced Jennifer's new assignment. Agent Rodriguez will be establishing and directing the Civilian Integration Division, a new department dedicated to placing specially trained operatives in positions where they can monitor threats to national security while appearing to be ordinary American workers. Jennifer accepted the promotion to senior special agent with the understanding that her experience at Blackstone Financial was just the beginning. The program she would develop would place former special operations personnel in positions throughout American society, from tech companies in Silicon Valley to shipping companies in Seattle, from financial firms in Chicago to defense contractors in Virginia. 3 months later, the program's first graduates completed their training at a classified facility outside Washington, D.C. 23 former special operations veterans had been prepared for civilian cover assignments, each with backgrounds carefully constructed to make them appear overqualified for their target positions, while being perfectly qualified for intelligence gathering. Former Delta Force operator Michael Torres would become a night shift security supervisor at a West Coast port facility suspected of facilitating arms smuggling. Ex-Navy SEAL Catherine Walsh would work as a financial analyst at a tech startup that received funding from sources with questionable international connections. Retired Army Ranger David Chun would serve as a logistics coordinator for a shipping company with routes that crossed known drug trafficking corridors. Each operative had studied Jennifer's methods extensively, how to maintain professional competence while appearing to overstep boundaries, how to gather intelligence through legitimate work activities, how to document criminal evidence without compromising operational security. Most importantly, they learned how to leverage being underestimated as a tactical advantage. The program's first major success came from an unexpected source. Agent Torres, working his cover assignment at the port facility, identified a smuggling operation that had evaded federal detection for 2 years. His supervisor position gave him access to shipping manifests and security footage that revealed systematic customs fraud involving weapons shipments to Mexican cartels. The beauty of Michael's position, Jennifer explained to the Oversight Committee reviewing the program's progress, is that criminal organizations expect security supervisors to be retired cops or ex-military looking for easy work. They don't expect them to be active federal agents with specialized training in recognizing sophisticated smuggling operations. The success stories multiplied as more operatives completed their assignments. Agent Walsh's financial analysis work revealed cryptocurrency transactions that funded domestic terrorism. Agent Chun's logistics coordination exposed a human trafficking network operating through legitimate freight companies. Each success validated Jennifer's fundamental insight that criminal organizations were vulnerable to surveillance. They didn't recognize as surveillance, but perhaps the most significant impact came from changes within corporate America itself. The revelation of Jennifer's assignment had prompted companies across multiple industries to reevaluate how they assessed employee capabilities and potential security threats. Blackstone Financial became a case study in corporate transformation. Under new leadership that recognized the value of diverse perspectives and questioned traditional assumptions about employee roles, the company implemented policies that encouraged input from all personnel levels. The changes weren't just about political correctness, they were about operational security. Sarah Martinez, promoted to Director of International Operations following the investigation, established protocols that treated administrative staff as valuable intelligence sources rather than invisible support personnel. Jennifer's assignment taught us that the people closest to day-to-day operations often see patterns that executives miss. She explained to a corporate security conference, dismissing their insights isn't just bad management, it's a security vulnerability. The program's influence extended beyond corporate environments. Universities began incorporating case studies of Jennifer's assignment into business ethics and security management curricula. Military academies added coursework on civilian integration operations. Federal law enforcement agencies revised training. programs to emphasize the importance of unconventional surveillance methods. A year after leaving Blackstone Financial, Jennifer received an invitation to speak at the company's annual leadership conference. The invitation came from Marcus Thornfield, who had undergone his own transformation following the investigation. "Agent Rodriguez," Thornfield said as he introduced her to an audience that included many of her former colleagues, "taught us that excellence doesn't always appear in the forms we expect." Her assignment revealed that our assumptions about capability and authority were not just wrong, they were dangerous. Jennifer's presentation to the corporate audience focused on lessons that extended beyond intelligence operations. "The greatest security threat to any organization," she told them, "is the assumption that threats will announce themselves obviously. The most dangerous people are often those who appear completely harmless." But she also addressed the human dimension of her experience. Being underestimated was professionally useful, but personally challenging. "The dismissive treatment I received wasn't just about maintaining my cover. It reflected real attitudes that exist throughout corporate America about who deserves respect and whose input has value." The audience included Amanda Pierce, who had been demoted following the investigation, but had used the experience to examine her own biases about colleague capabilities. During the question period, she stood to address Jennifer directly. "Agent Rodriguez, I've spent the past year thinking about how I treated you and how my behavior reflected assumptions I didn't even realize I was making. What would you say to managers who want to avoid making similar mistakes?" Jennifer's response reflected the wisdom gained from her unique perspective. "Listen to the people who understand operations from the ground level. The secretary who coordinates international communications may understand global business patterns better than executives who only see summary reports. The administrative assistant who processes financial records may recognize irregularities that accountants miss. Excellence exists throughout organizations, but it's often invisible to people who only look in expected places." As her presentation concluded, Jennifer reflected on the journey that had brought her from underestimated secretary to recognized expert in unconventional intelligence operations. Her assignment at Blackstone Financial had succeeded beyond all expectations, but its greatest legacy wasn't the criminal network she'd dismantled or the terrorist financing she'd prevented. The greatest legacy was proving that some of America's most dangerous enemies could be defeated by people they would never suspect, people who appeared so ordinary, so harmless, so beneath notice that criminal organizations ignored them completely. Jennifer Rodriguez had spent 3 years being invisible in the corporate world. Now she was training others to use that same invisibility as America's newest weapon in the fight against threats that hid in plain sight. The secretary they had underestimated had become the architect of a revolution in how America protected itself, one administrative assistant, one financial analyst, one logistics coordinator at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.